Welcome, everyone. Flatzoid got something wrong yet again. He takes on the Action Labs Can a Boat Float on Supercritical Fluid video with his own relative density disequilibrium proven video. I am only showing the relevant clips from Flatzoid's video that pertain to the Action Labs video because he shows clips of other flat earthers citing what independent variables are. You know, the flat earthers' latest obsession of choice. I want to apologize for any background noise that may come through my mic as my husband and son are working on the car outside. With that out of the way, it's time for our feature presentation.
What would happen if there was a boat floating on the surface of the liquid right when it turns supercritical? What happens to the boat? Does it just stay right where it was floating before? Or would it now float to the top since the whole tank is now filled? Or would it sink to the bottom because there's no layer of liquid to float on?
We're gonna fill up regular water. And then we're gonna dab the egg in there. Let's see what happens. Then we're gonna fill up second with water, but put salt in there and mix it. As you can see, it floats. Put a lot of salt in there. Put water up in there. Yeah, a bit more than half full in the salt water. As you can see, it floats. Now we're gonna get fresh water and put on top of it. Let's see what happens. You see egg floating in the middle. Tell me why. Why does that happen? This one floating on top, this one drowned, and this one floating in the middle.
Now I'm going to try and prove is that if I change the density of the medium, I will cause the effect by adding salt. So if I can change it, because I'm the experimenter and I'm manipulating my presumed cause, my independent variable is the medium, that egg moves, I've caused it. We know the parts per million is about 300. All we need to do is pour some of this in. Hey, what do you know? The eggs immediately moved. Didn't have to wait for that, did we? So, what's the explanation? Scientific method states that the independent variable is the presumed cause, and I presumed that changing the density of the liquid with salt would cause a displacement. Newton's first law of motion states that every object will remain at rest unless acted upon by a force, and I've obviously created a force. The density of the medium has displaced the egg moved, that's an accelerated mass, so therefore Newton states that there is a force. I caused it with this. So in scientific method, the cause of the displacement is this. I've caused it. I've manipulated it, I added the salt, it caused something.
The reason he's talking about this again is because he hasn't mentioned it here, but I think in this experiment, this video, they actually poured the salt in. So I think he's claiming you can change the density of the medium, and therefore that is the cause, or his independent variable is how much salt you've poured in. He hasn't mentioned this, of course, but I think that's actually what he's trying to get at. I mean, I know it seems insane what he's saying here about you have the control over the density, and but he actually means that that's because he's been pouring salt into it or not.
Yeah, exactly. You obviously do have the control over the density, but where's the connection from that to density is a force?
Yeah, I mean, just...
Those in the chat.
Hey, Dal, check here. Look, I'm going to quickly debunk you in 10 seconds. You know what that's called? Unbalanced force. No acceleration required. You're welcome. Literally, that's relative density disequilibrium and debunks your whole argument. You require an acceleration. I didn't have acceleration now. I had an unbalanced force. Thank you very much. Because what happens is the object is unbalanced with the air around it, the medium around it. That's why we have densities.
Density is the word we use to describe how much space an object or substance takes up, its volume, in relation to the amount of matter in that object or substance, its mass. Another way to put it is that density is the amount of mass per unit of volume. If an object is heavy and compact, it has a high density.
In the chat.
Hey, Dal, check here. Look, I'm going to quickly debunk you in 10 seconds. You know what that's called? Unbalanced force.
To have an unbalanced force means that the force applied in one direction is greater than the force applied in the opposite direction. When unbalanced forces are acting on an object, there is a change in speed and/or direction. What I saw in that clip was Flatzoid putting an object on its end on the palm of his hand. And because his hand was not flat and level with the surface of the Earth, when he let go of the top of the object, it fell toward the surface of the Earth. Flatzoid is simply using the unbalanced force explanation because he denies gravity, which is the fundamental interaction which causes mutual attraction between all things that have mass. Now we get to Flatzoid's cherry-picked part of the Action Labs video that he thinks proves relative density disequilibrium. It just proves Toon's first law of Flurf, which is Flurf's citations always contradict the Flurf's claims, no exceptions.
Well, today I'm going to be testing this out by actually floating a small styrofoam boat in liquid CO2 and then heating it to its supercritical point. It is floating. Okay, now I'm heating it up. See if we can get to supercritical pressure here. The styrofoam is dipping deeper down in it now. The line's disappearing. Whoa, and it's kind of rising up above the surface of the styrofoam. Oh, the styrofoam sunk. It sunk down in the liquid. But now I can no longer see a meniscus on top. You can't really tell where the gas and the liquid separate from each other.
We observed relative density disequilibrium full on display. What happened when he had increased the temperature of the medium? It became critical, and therefore the density had changed enough for the styrofoam to sink. So the displacement had been the driving force for the movement. The unbalanced force had been attributed by the object through the medium. This proves without a doubt mass does not attract mass, therefore the mass does not give rise to a force, but it's an unbalanced force due to the object ratio of its density to the medium. That proves without a doubt relative density disequilibrium is the real deal and gravity is just a farce.
Remember Toon's first law of Flurf I cited earlier? Yeah, here is the part of the video that he left out that actually proves him wrong. Dear oh dear.
Oh, the styrofoam sunk. It sunk down in the liquid. But now I can no longer see a meniscus on top. You can't really tell where the gas and the liquid separate from each other. Okay, it's fully supercritical now.
A supercritical fluid is any substance at a temperature and pressure above its critical point, where distinct liquid and gas phases do not exist, but below the pressure required to compress it into a solid.
Over 1,000 psi now. And the styrofoam is at the bottom. You can still see that it's being heated from the side there. So you can see some little waves happening from the hot fluid rising. But it's all supercritical. There's no meniscus whatsoever. If I pick up the vessel and move it around, you can see that there isn't two states in here anymore. It's just one state that's a little viscous, and the styrofoam can just fall through it slowly.
It's important to note that supercritical fluids are a natural phenomenon. Supercritical water is found on Earth, such as the water issuing from black smokers, a type of hydrothermal vent, as seen here. This video is titled, "What are hydrothermal vents?" Its description reads, "The waters around hydrothermal vents may seem harsh and inhospitable to life, but in reality, these regions are oases that support rich and diverse ecosystems that make a living off of the chemicals that flow from the sea floor."
Okay, now let's let it cool down a bit, and it should revert from its supercritical state into a liquid with gas above it again. And I think the styrofoam should float once again. Okay, I'm going to put an ice cube on top. Oh, it disappears from view, gone. Oh, there it is. I saw it start to float. And it's back on top. Look at that. As soon as it's out of the supercritical phase, then it floats back on top of the meniscus. That is so cool. It's totally back on top.
Toon's first law of Flurf proven without a doubt. It appears that by cooling down the cylinder, the supercritical fluid is no longer supercritical. It's back to being two separate mediums, a liquid and a gas, with the styrofoam boat once again floating on the liquid. So much for Flatzoid's proof of relative density disequilibrium.
So why did this boat sink when it went supercritical? Well, if you think about it, right before it turned supercritical, there's a liquid on bottom and a gas on top. Since the boat is floating right on the surface of the meniscus, that means the average density of the boat is more dense than the gas but less dense than the liquid. But then once it becomes supercritical, these two states suddenly become one. So it would make sense that the density of the remaining fluid should be some average of these two states. And sure enough, if you look up the density of liquid CO2, it's around 800 grams per liter at room temperature. But then once it reaches its critical point, it suddenly drops to just above 400 grams per liter. This average density is less dense than the boat's average density, so it sinks to the bottom. This would also be the case with any real boat that had an open top as well. So there we go. Now we know that boats sink in supercritical fluids.
You know, while looking over my rendered video, I thought I should add more about relative density disequilibrium. But when searching for it on search engines like Google and DuckDuckGo, that term only came up in reference to YouTube videos by flat earthers, including this one in this video, and those responding to those flat earthers' claims of relative density disequilibrium. So, in my opinion, it seems like most claims by flat earthers, one pulled relative density disequilibrium out of their butt and threw it at the ice wall of the flat earth to see if it stuck. It seems that other flat earthers picked up relative density disequilibrium and threw it at the other flat earthers who caught it, and so on and so forth. Thus, after many throws from flat earther to flat earther, it was firmly set in place as 100% flat earth doctrine. Of course, when any evidence to the contrary, backed up with data, measurements, and such is shown, flat earthers do their ritual plugging their ears, singing la 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 la, and deflection. Why? Because they fear the flat earth belief bubble being burst and no new members joining the flat earth cult, religion. Hashtag gotta lie to Flurf. Don't forget to do all the YouTubey things. You know what they are. You've got it. You know the drill. Thank you for watching. You are all awesome. See you in the next video.